Okay, once I've decided on what tasks and subtasks I actually want, the next thing I'm going to have a look at is the duration. Now, the beauty of doing this at this point is that at this point I've actually decided what are macro level items, which are the ones in bold, all the way down along here, and what are micro level items, which are the ones not in bold. Okay, and the great thing is I only need to add durations to the micro level options. Okay, so anything that's not in bold I need to add a duration to. Everything else will automatically be calculated based on the times that I put in here. Okay, so my durations at the moment, all my durations are in as 1 day with a question mark. Okay, and the question mark at this point in time looks at, it's an estimated time. Okay, so it really means that that's been put in by the computer rather than us. So what we need to then look at is we need to go down through it and figure out what are micro level items, what time we're going to spend, or we think we're going to spend on each of those items. Now, the beauty of MS Project and Project 365 is that both of them automatically calculate our entirety of our project. And it's a bit like Excel. If we change one figure in our calculations, everything dependent on that will change. So the great thing is if I'm doing this and I'm planning that brainstorming is going to take 2 hours, but really when I do it, brainstorming only takes 1 hour and 10 minutes or 1 hour and 20 minutes or 1 hour. Well, I can change it and then it will have an effect on everything after that. It will push things forward and it will calculate the overall duration, and we'll see later on it will actually have an effect on the cost as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, and as I said, I'm only going to focus on anything which is not in bold over here. So if I see the first one is not in bold, is brainstorming. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a time for this. Now, a little bit of a caveat here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add times fairly randomly here. Okay, I'm not going to base my times on anything in particular because every project, the tasks might have different times. So for instance, for one project, the brainstorming part might only take a day. For other projects, it might take 10 days. For other projects, it might take months or years. Okay. So what I'm actually going to say is, I'm going to put them in here. I don't want anyone to pay too much attention to the actual times I put in there. It's more about the technique I'm using here to do so. And with all of our tasks down along here, they're going to be relatively short tasks. So we're not going to add 1 day or 1 week or 1 month or 1 year to them. Normally we're going to add hours here, okay, or minutes. And what we do is for 1 minute we put in 1 M. For 1 hour we put in 1 H. For if I wanted to put in 60 M for 60 minutes or 1 hour, it's exactly the same. Okay. On top of that, I would avoid using 1 day, because if I ask the class normally what does 1 day, how many hours are in a day, people would go 24 hours. But really, when you're talking about working days, it's 8 hours. And we know for looking at our own timetabling earlier on, we know that we're only working 2 hours on an actual Tuesday and 1 hour on a Thursday. So our working, if I put down 1 day, it will actually take the equivalent of nearly 3 weeks worth of work here to do that. So be very careful with your 1 days, especially your 1 weeks and your 1 months and your 1 years. Okay, be very, very careful with that. So I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to say brainstorming, and I'm just going to put them in here. I'm going to say 2 hours. Okay. Secondary research and primary research. Okay, I'm going to turn around for secondary research. I'm going to say I did a little bit of online research, a little bit of Googling, a little bit of trying to find out what's going on here. I'm going to say I spent 3 hours on this. Okay. Primary research. Now, guys, secondary and primary, if you come up with your brainstorming and you have a really good brainstorming session, you come up with an idea and you know it's absolutely cracking idea, you may not even need to do any background research on it. So these might change from project to project, whether there's any secondary research in here or primary research in here and so on. So I'm going to put in the case of my primary research, I'm going to put in 2 hours. Now, as I said, I'm going to skip my micro or my macro level items such as analysis. And what it's going to do here is if I calculate all of these, it will calculate the time for analysis based on these down along here. So my aims, I'm going to say it took me 1 hour to come up with my aims. It took me 20 minutes to come up with my objectives. Okay, audience analysis took me 4 hours. Project information took me 2 hours. I'm going to turn around and say my time cost analysis here, which is what I'm doing here. In total, I'm going to say it took me 2 hours to do it. Okay, guys, when it comes to this here, I'm going to save this particular file when I'm finished, and you can all use this as your starting point. And you can take out certain micro level items and you can add in your own and so on, and you can play around with whatever you want to. What I'm interested in your project management is the fact that you your times, your predecessors, which we're going to have a look at next, and of course your resources, which will generate, of course, reports and so on. Audience analysis. Okay, next one down, system analysis. These are things we haven't yet done, but we're going to do them in the next few tutorials. So I'm going to say system analysis took me 20 minutes. Content analysis took me 1 hour. Publication, promotion, information. This is actually figuring out where we would promote if we were going to, okay? And how we would do so, and where we would publish our information, where we publish our website. So in this case here, I'm going to say 2 hours. Storyboards, I'm going to say 4 hours. Flowchart, 1 hour. Okay. Content creation, I'm going to say 20 hours. Content implementation, I'm going to say, or integration, 20 hours. Publication, I'm going to say 30 minutes. Literally, that's taking your website and putting it up online. Okay. Traditional promotion and digital promotion. Now, guys, you're going to see later on in this, we have dealt with, all of you should have taken Digital Tree or are taking Digital Tree at this point in time. And all of this is covered in there. So in web development, we're not expecting you to actually promote your website, because that is covered in another module. Okay, so I'm just going to put down 0 hours here. Sorry. I'm going to put down 0. I put in a naught there instead of a 0, and 0 here. Okay. Innovation, I'm going to say 2 hours, and launch, I'm going to put down 0. Because the launch is actually a milestone, it's actually your finish line. You can see that goes in as a milestone, as a diamond there, as opposed to a task length. Okay. In normal projects, a real project, it'll be the only 0 in there. And in fact, in real projects, we might actually have a launch party and have a launch build up and so on. So there actually could be tasks in there that will actually give you time and so on. So really what we've done there is we've actually put in all of our times down along here. You can see that it calculates the entirety of our project as being 2.5 days. Okay. Now, we can also see, if we look carefully at this, that it's not very realistic at this point in time, because all of our tasks, if you look at it, all of them start on the exact same day. Okay, which is unrealistic. It means that, you can actually start uploading your site on the same day that you're actually thinking about your idea, which is ludicrous. Okay, but that's the next thing we're going to have a look at, and that is all about predecessors, and as to what goes first, what comes next, what should we do. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a little idea on this one here, what predecessors mean. I normally use an example of, if I was to get a glass of water, what are the stages involved in getting a glass of water? And normally people look at me strangely when I ask that question, because they think it's such a simplistic task, and it is. Okay. So what I'm actually asking is, what are the stages involved in getting a glass of water? So if I opened it up to a classroom, they'd normally come back and say, well, you have to get the glass. And I said, yeah, okay. So getting glass is important. Okay. You have to go to the sink and switch on the tap. Okay. You have to hold the glass underneath the tap. You have to fill the glass, and you have to switch off the water. So there are the tasks involved in getting a glass of water. I know it's very simplistic, but just bear with me a second. Okay. So there are the tasks. Would everyone agree that in order to have a glass of water, I have got to turn on the water before I put the glass underneath it? And I've got to fill the glass before I switch off the tap. So it has to be all be done in a certain order, okay? But just to complicate issues a little bit, just say I live in a very small house. Can I multitask? Can I get the glass and switch on the tap at the same time? Yes, I can, okay? Everyone will agree that I need to put the glass underneath the tap before I switch it off in order to get a glass of water, okay? So certain things have to happen in certain order, okay? And it's the exact same thing with this project here. It's the exact same thing with every project. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to get this line here in the middle of the screen, which breaks my Gantt chart on the right and my data on my left. I'm just going to make it a little bit wider, okay? And by doing so, I can now see that I have another column down here called predecessors, okay? And I'm going to start filling this, okay? And my predecessors, I've got to start looking at these different things, okay? Now, what I'm going to actually put in here is certain tasks that must be complete before I start another task. So with the idea here of, I'm just going to go and I'm just going to start off here. The idea is the first task and everything here is a subtask of that. So I'm only going to deal with my main task first. The idea, analysis, planning, design, publication, promotion, innovation, and launch. Okay, they're my main tasks. You can see them all in a line with one another down along here. Okay, so I'm going to say that in order for analysis to begin, I must be finished with my idea. Okay, so I've got to come up with my idea before I can start analysis. Okay, so I'm going to put a number in here after analysis. Okay, and the number I'm going to put in here is the equivalent number to the idea, which is actually number 2 over here. Okay, so I'm going to put number 2 in there. Now, what happens when I put number 2 in there? Well, you can see over here on the right hand side that all my tasks in analysis jump out another week or so, okay? And really what it's saying is that these cannot begin, the analysis cannot begin until I finish with my idea. My idea is going to take this long here, therefore I can't begin that until then, okay? Now, would everyone agree planning comes after analysis? So I can't start my planning until I have my analysis done. So what I'm going to say is that, like with the idea of, you know, flow charts and storyboards and stuff like that, I can't do any of those until I have an aim and an objective. I have a time cost analysis and I have an audience analysis. So I can't do any of those until analysis is finished. So after planning, I'm going to put in a number associated with analysis, which is 7. So I'm just going to put in 7 there. And again, you will see if I scroll across here, that jumps out until you can see it is now pushing things out, okay? Design. I cannot actually begin designing until I'm finished planning. So I can't actually start designing my website until I actually have a cohesive set of storyboards and flow charts together and all my planning done. So I'm going to put number 13 there behind it, okay? Publication. In other words, I can't actually put the stuff up online until it's all finished design. So I'm going to put 19 after that. Promotion. I'm going to say I can't actually begin promoting until I've actually got my website up and launched. That's not quite true. I could actually start a little bit earlier. And you quite often see this, that, you know, prior to a launch, you'll see maybe publication coming out saying and promotion coming out saying that that this is going to happen and looking forward to this and coming soon and these kind of things. But I'm just going to keep it simple for the moment and put in 22 in there. Innovation happens after promotion, so I'm going to put in 23 in there. And then finally, launch happens after the whole thing, so I'm going to put 26 in there, okay? Sorry. I typed in the wrong one, 26 in here. That moves right to the very end, okay? Now, because I've changed these ones here, these are just the major tasks I've looked at so far. Because I've changed these, my date is now, or my time duration for the entire project has gone from from 2.5 days up to 4.19 days. Okay, so it's after lengthening it, and that's expected because what I'm after doing is after putting things in order. It's like my glass of water scenario. You know, it actually puts them all into the one start time. So it means that I can fill the glass the same time as I get the glass, the same time as I switch on the water, which I can't. So everything has to be put into the order that it appears in. Okay, now that's only looking at the main tasks. What I'm going to start doing here is I'm going to start looking at the micro tasks as well, and we can put predecessors on these as well. So what I'm going to say is every first subtask within a task, such as brainstorming an idea, I don't need to put a number in there because that's the first thing that happens anyway. I can put the same number. I can put number 2 in there, for instance, as because it's the exact same starting date as aims will start at the same time as the full analysis will start at, but I don't need to put something in there. Okay, so with my brainstorming, I'm going to say that that I don't have a predecessor. It's my very first subtask or micro level task. Okay, I'm also going to say here that my research can't begin until my brainstorming is done. Okay, so I'm actually going to put number 3 there after my secondary research. And I'm going to try something a little bit different here. What I'm going to do here with this is I'm going to actually say that my primary and my secondary research can happen together in parallel. So I'm going to put number 3 there as well. I'm just going to show you that's very possible to do that, and it's very common to do something like that. Okay, so what I'm saying is that neither the secondary nor the primary can start before you've done some brainstorming, but both the primary and the secondary can start at the exact same time. I'm going to move down to the next one, and I'm going to have a look at the objectives, and I'm going to say my objectives cannot begin till my aims are finished. So I'm going to put 8 there. Audience can't begin until I have my objectives done. 9 there. Time costs, project information can't begin until I have my audience done. 10, and I'm going to say 11 in here. Now you will see a lot of these tasks are happening chronologically because we put them in that order. Okay, and you'll see that quite often your tasks look like steps of stairs going down, and that's very, very common. Okay, same content analysis can't begin until I'm finished my system analysis. 14, publication promotion information. 15, storyboards. 16. And I'm just going to pause for a second here. The number I'm going to put in here for flowchart is going to be 17, but I just want to ask a simple question. I want everyone to, after this question, pause the video and have a think of the answer before I give you the answer. Okay, so I really want you to have a go at this. Okay, so it's a little bit of gamification built in. It's a little bit of testing your knowledge. Okay, so just to see where we're at here, I'm just going to ask a simple question. The number I'm going to put in here is going to be 17. But what numbers can I not put in here? Okay, so what numbers would be completely and utterly wrong to put in underneath 18 here? Okay, so into the predecessor here for flowchart. Okay, so have a think about that. What number would be wrong to put in here? There are a number of numbers here. Okay, so see if you can come up with 4 or 5 of them. Okay, so I'm just going to pause it for a second. I want you to pause the video and have a think about this. Get out a little jotter and have a think about this, okay? Don't be sneaky. Pause it. Have a go at it, okay? The answer will come in a second. Okay. Did we have a think about this? Really? Did we? Are we just waiting for the person beside you to come up with the answer? Okay. I'm just going to highlight the numbers that you can't put in here, and it won't allow you to put in there, and it'll actually say, no, that's wrong. For starters, 18. I can't put 18 in there because 18 is the task itself. And if I did put 18 in there, it means that I cannot start my flowchart until I finish my flowchart. So that makes absolutely no sense, okay? So 18 is one of the things that I can't put in there, okay? Another number I can't put in here is 13, okay, which is planning. Now the reason I can't put planning in there is because it's flowchart is part of planning, okay, it's part of it. So in other words, I can't actually start my flowchart until all of planning is finished, okay? That would be ridiculous because flowchart is part of the planning process, okay? So that's the second one. So 18, 13. Next one, number 1 itself. Every single subtask, every single task here is a subtask of the web development process. So again, I can't say I want to finish the web development process, but in order to do that, I've got to do the flow charting bit. So therefore, 1 is not a number that I can put in there. And finally, if you want to say finally, because this is a group of numbers, so to speak, okay, anything from 19 on, okay, 19, 20, 21, all the way up to infinity and beyond, okay, I can't put any of these in there because these are all dependent on 13 being finished. You can see here, all of the ones down here are dependent on 13 being finished, and flowchart is part of 13. So the answers I got are 1, 13, 18, and from 19 on. Okay, 19 higher, any number higher than 19. Okay, so that was, hopefully you had a go at that, and hopefully you had to think about that, because that really, normally in class, that will tell me where you stand and whether you're understanding what's going on here or not. So the answer I'm going to put in here is 17, and I'm going to move on. Okay, now the next two here are obviously content creation is the first task underneath design, so I don't need to put anything there. I could put 13 there, but there's no need for me to do so. Okay. But what I'm going to do is, the only question you can ask is content creation, content implementation. Can they happen at the one time? Okay. What I'm going to say is, normally on a website, you might create your actual copy, like your text, your video, your audio, your images, and you'll do that. And then you'll start, incorporating them onto your website, which is the second part, content implementation. So I'm going to say that this will only start when 20 actually finishes, okay? Now these two tasks here, in normal life, they could be quite long things, but in our actual project, I'm not expecting you to do the actual traditional digital promotion. I'm only expecting you to do the talk about where you would promote them if you had all the resources and so on. So literally we're finished with our predecessors here. Now what's really interesting about this is my project now has moved out. Look, and I'm not finished until the 19th of November. Okay, it only takes 8.15 days, but remember my days are about 3 weeks. Okay, so it pushes it out till then. Okay, that's very interesting, because when you do your actual project, if this is actually in after the closing date of assignment 2, well then you need to bring this back. Okay, so that's very, very important to look at. Okay, now if for instance this date is after the submission date for assignment 2, and the date for flowcharts here, just highlighting flowcharts for a second, is after the submission of assignment 1, well then you've got to bring these back. Okay, you've got to make sure that the date happens before the submission of assignment 1 and assignment 2. How do you do that? Well, there's two ways of doing it, two very simple ways of doing it. You either reduce the number of hours and minutes it takes to do single tasks, or you go right back to the very beginning, okay, and you go back to your project and you change your working times, okay, and you increase your working times. Because remember, if I increase my working time each week by just 1 single hour, it actually increases my time by a third, as it turns out. Okay, so I'm actually working 3 hours a day at the moment. Okay, so it'll move up by a third of that again. Okay, so it's very, very important to remember that. So whatever happens, your actual start date and your finish date have got to be before the submission of assignment 1 and assignment 2. Okay, so that's looking at predecessors.